Welcome, students. I welcome you back. During this class, it will be inshallah a long session where we will discuss different types of the problems related to dynamics, and we will learn some techniques to solve the dynamics problem. Previously, we have completed all topics, theoretical topics from the chapters, and we have almost completed maximum number of the topics from your level. So we today we are starting another portion of this presentation. So the classes practice, that is dynamics problems. So here it is. Before we go to the dynamics problem, let's first of all see some of the important topics. After revising, we will move towards the numericals. So here is the few points: the mass and weight, action and reaction, sliding friction and rolling friction. What's the difference? Starting from mass is the quantity of matter a body contains. Weight is the force through which a body attracts bodies towards its center. Mass is a scalar quantity, and weight is a vector quantity. Unit of mass is kg. Unit of weight is Newton, because it's a force. Mass is scalar quantity, and weight is vector quantity. Mass remains constant everywhere, but the weight changes from place to place because it's a force. Mass is measured with spring balance and weight is measured with physical balance. Formula to calculate mass is m is equal to w over g. If someone told you, if you are given weight, you can divide the weight with the value of g and you can calculate the mass of object. Weight is calculated by a formula w is equal to mg. So these are differences for the weight and mass. Action and reaction, then sliding friction or rolling friction. So here is the action and reaction. The applied force by one object over other object is called action, and the opposite force produced due to the action is called reaction. When book is placed on the table, action is weight of the book acting on the table of the surface, and reaction is the normal provided by the table surface. And in this case, the direction of normal is upward, and the action of the book is downward, that is weight. So this is the main difference in case of action and reaction. So here it is, surface, this is action, this is action. A book is applying on the surface of the table, and if it is a weight, and the reaction is the normal provided by the table on the book. So the table in action, if the action is weight of the book, the reaction of the table is acting in upward direction, so it's keeping it in balance. Sliding friction and rolling friction. Sometimes a question is asked, which one is more, sliding or rolling? One body slides over the other, then the friction produces is called sliding friction. And in case of sliding friction, most of the body surface is in touch with the other body surface. So that's why the sliding friction is more. More the body is in contact surface of the area, more will be the sliding friction. When a body rolls over the other body, then the friction is called rolling friction. Rolling of one body over the other side, like tire, like the spherical other types of the objects which are rolled over one another. So the rolling friction is 1,000 times more less than the sliding friction. Why? Because in case of rolling friction, the only one point of body is in contact with the other. So this is the minimum level where two bodies are in contact with each other. So that's why the rolling friction is very less than sliding friction. So let's start today's topic, that is how to apply dynamics to calculate some of the problems. A force of 20 Newton moves a body with an acceleration of 2 meter per second square versus mass. So we have studied about force. We have neglected the force in case of kinematics, but this is a chapter which is purely with concerned with the force, and force is playing an important role. So first of all, the same technique, the same procedure we write on the given data. This one is force given, that is 20 Newton, and then acceleration given. After applying a force of 20 Newton, acceleration of 2 meter per second square is produced. You are asked to calculate mass. So here is the formula for the mass. To calculate F is equal to ma. This was Newton's second law of motion, which defines when there is a body of mass m and a force acts on that body of mass m and acceleration is produced. So these are three physical quantities, that is mass, force, and acceleration. If one of them is given, then we can calculate the other one. So to calculate mass, it is equal to F over A. So mass is equal to 20 divided by 10, and m is equal to 10 kg. So this is the formula to calculate the mass, and when you have calculated mass during any type of the problem, it is important to remember that don't forget to write the unit of the quantity, because these units are basically important to present some of the quantities. So how much force is needed to prevent a body of mass 10 kg from falling? If you look at the question, how much force is needed to prevent a body of mass, this is the mass, from falling. So first of all, what's required? The force is required. Mass is 10 kg. And what's the formula to calculate weight? Weight is calculated by using mg formula. So weight is equal to the normal reaction of the force. F is equal to mg. So this is with the same amount of the force equal to the weight which we try to move, prevent the body for falling. How it is specified, how will you come to understand? The amount of weight a body is acting on a body is acting, it tries to move the body in downward direction. At the same time, the reaction of the air acts in upward direction, which tries to stop. So how will you come to know that which amount of force is trying to stop? Very simple. We will calculate the weight. This will be the force which is equal in magnitude of weight, and this force will be responsible to stop the moving body in downward direction. So very simple, and you will calculate force by using weight definition. W is equal to mg, and this will be the same force which, if the weight is acting in downward, same force will be acting in upward direction. So how will you calculate that force? Mass given, but we have a value of g, then you will calculate the force acting in upward direction. So find the acceleration produced by a force of 100 Newton in a mass of 50 kgs. So here it is. If you look at the force given is 100 Newton, the mass given is 50 kgs. So you are asked to calculate the acceleration again. You will go back and ask from the Newton. This is the problem. How I have to calculate. Newton will explain. This is the force acting on a mass, body of mass is, and then of course the acceleration will be produced. I use my formula, that is F is equal to ma, and put the values of force and mass, then you will be able to calculate the acceleration. Very simple. Force is given, now mass is given, you are asked to calculate acceleration. You will calculate acceleration by using this formula. A is equal to F over m, and A is equal to 100 divided by 50. So the acceleration is basically 2 meter per second is here. So what was the question? How much acceleration is produced by a force of 100 Newton in a mass of 50 kgs? So this is the answer. Because the body is heavier, you are applying very less force, that's why small amount of acceleration will be produced. Look, this is the relation of mass with acceleration. Mass is more, acceleration will be less. Because the mass is 50 kgs, the acceleration will be less, that's like 2 meters per second. So the body has a weight of 20 newton. How much force is required to move it vertically upward with an acceleration that is 2 meters per second square? This is the unit of acceleration. So first of all, we will write the unit, the data, then it becomes more easier for us to apply the force. So this is basically clear picture when and where you have to decide to calculate the required quantity. So what is the weight? Weight is basically 20 Newton. Force is required to calculate how much force is required. Acceleration is also given, that is 2 meters, and mass is asked. So first of all, to calculate force, we need to know about the mass, but the mass is not there. So first of all, we will follow a mathematical technique to calculate the mass, and after calculating mass, we will put the value of this mass in this formula, then we will be able to calculate force. From where this came to your mind, because first of all, we have to see what's asked, what's the requirement, it is of the force, and how the force is calculated when these quantities are given, acceleration and weight. Then we need mass, and from where we will calculate mass. If the weight is given, we can calculate the mass. So mass is calculated by using this formula. And after getting mass, look at what data you have. You have acceleration. Now you have mass. Then what's the harm in calculating the force? This is a simple formula to calculate force. So this is a 4 Newton force acting on the body, which is in downward direction. So what will be the net force acting then? A body has weight of 20 Newton. How much force is required to move vertically upward with an acceleration? This one acceleration, you have calculated the force by using that amount as acceleration. So this must be the force required. So how much force is required then? Weight of the body, that is 20 Newton. Plus, you are applying another force on the body, that is 4 Newton, to produce such amount of acceleration in the body in upward direction. So that's why you will add the total number of forces acting in the body, and it is 4 plus 20, which is net force acting will be 24 Newton. Because in this case, you are not asked only to calculate the force, because you have to see if any force is acting in downward direction, at the same time one force is acting in upward direction. So that force has to produce acceleration of 2 meters per second square. So you have to calculate first the force with the help of this acceleration, and then you will be able to calculate the total net force acting, and you will add these two weight plus force acting in upward direction. So this is the total amount of force acting on this object. Here is another case. Two masses 52 kgs and 48 kgs are attached to the ends of a string that passes over a frictionless pulley. Find the tension in the string and acceleration in the bodies when both the masses are moving vertically. So this one is the case which you have already done. So here is the pulley, and the one mass, both the masses are hanging vertically. So this is a case where both the masses are hanging vertically, and you are asked to calculate, and you have already done during the three classes. You have calculated acceleration and tension for both the cases. So tension is always acting in upward direction. Again tension here. Tension always acts in upward direction. Weight acts in downward direction. If it is W1, it will be W2. So These are the two masses, weights which are hanging vertically, and this is the case where you have calculated by using two equations. That is, this one is if M1 and this one is say M2. So here it will be W1, and here it will be W2. Then you will apply Newton's second law of motion and you will get two equations. And after solving these two equations, you will be able to calculate acceleration, this one, and the tension in the string. So this was your main task to complete. So in this question, the masses of both the bodies are given. Look, masses are given. M1 and M2 both are given, are attached to the end of a string which passes over a frictionless pulley. Find the tension in the string and the body's acceleration in the body. So here are the masses. Here is the value of g. What you need, you need to understand. You need to remember the formula used to calculate acceleration and tension. If you don't have in your mind, quickly use 2 to 3 minutes only. Find out two equations and get it done with the formula of acceleration and tension. Then you will be able to calculate the acceleration and tension. But don't mix the two. When both the bodies are hanging vertically, the case is different. But if one is on horizontal table, the other one is hanging vertically, the case will be different. So you have to find out these values of acceleration and tension, and after using this one. And if you want to revise it, you can go to see back my lecture. I have explained in detail how the values of acceleration and tensions are calculated. And if you know that case both the bodies are hanging vertically or horizontally, one horizontal and another vertical, then it will be more easier for you to apply to calculate the acceleration and tension. So here it is. So the next one is the other case, two bodies 26 kgs and 24 kgs are attached to the ends of a string which passes over a frictionless pulley. 26 kgs laying on the horizontal table, but 24 kg mass is moving vertically downward. Find the tension in the string and the acceleration. So this was like this one like table, and you have done that there was a block, and this block of 26 kg is on horizontal table, and here is the pulley, frictionless pulley. Other mass hangs vertically. If it is W1, the other one is W2. If this one is 24 kgs and this one is 26 kg, it is connected with a string, and a string passes over a pulley, frictionless pulley, and later on it moves. So force applied is in the direction of the pulley, and tension here, tension also acts in upward direction, but at the same time weight of the block acts in downward direction. So this was the case. You have used two equations. That is one, the case when the body is moving in downward direction. So you will see how it is moving in downward direction and what are the equations. And after solving these equations, you calculate the expression for. And look, this was only case when you have said that the body which is resting on horizontal surface like this one, the weight of the body is acting on the surface of table, and reaction of the surface is acting in upward direction. So what you have calculated, this was only tension which was acting towards the pulley, and this tension was responsible to calculate acceleration in the body. These two forces, action and reaction, are equal but cancelling each other. There is no net motion of body along reaction or weight, so that's why they are cancelling. So this one is the formula to calculate the acceleration, and this one is the formula to calculate the tension in this case. So you will put the values of the masses in these equations, then you will be able to calculate acceleration as well as tension. So this was the required to calculate. But first you have to understand which case it is. Don't mix these two cases together. First case is different when both the bodies are hanging vertically. The second one is different. When one is resting on the horizontal table, the other one is hanging vertically. So How much time is required to change 22 Newton second momentum by a force of 20 Newton force? This one, 20 Newton. So the question is related to momentum, one thing which you can understand. Momentum, 22 Newton second momentum by a force of 20 Newton. This is the change in momentum of this value. So change in momentum is basically 22 Newton second. How much time it will take, you are asked to calculate time, and force is given. There was a formula which you have done in detail, that is rate of change of momentum is equal to force, this one. So what is asked? Time is asked. This is the most important formula which explains the impact of one body with the other. Either you are shooting football, you are wearing helmet, you are wearing seat belt, or you are wearing any other type of skull and hair impact time. This is the best formula to explain when you will get more injury and what's the reason, and when you will be getting less injury, when the force acting will be more and when it will be less. It depends on time. More is the time, force have relation with this. So it's the relation that is, you have also proved this relation that the rate of change of momentum is equal to force. The same concept you are using, rate of change of momentum is equal to force. Why? Because force is given, change of momentum is given. You are basically asked to find out how much time it takes to change the momentum by this force. Or you can say how much time it will take by a 20 Newton force to change momentum of 22 Newton seconds. So time is calculated by using this formula. This formula basically, and after simplification, change in momentum divided by time. So here it is. This will be the amount of time taken by 20 Newton force to produce 22 Newton second momentum change. So this was the question, main question to understand. Again, I'm telling you, again, I'm in the same point. First of all, write on the complete picture of the data given, then try to understand, try to talk with the same physical quantities like you're talking with any human living being, so that there you can get the clear answers. So don't treat like the dead things when you are solving or when you are trying to understand some numerical. Try to talk with these quantities, and they will give you some solution or the clues. Automatically, you will come in to know that these are the techniques available and we can apply. So moving ahead, another problem, that is how much is the force of friction between a wooden block of mass 5 kg and horizontal table floor. The coefficient of friction between wood and marble, mostly it is given, that is 0.6. Why it's not carrying some unit? Because it's the ratio between the two similar quantities, mu. That is, force is asked, how much force will be, force of friction between wood and mass of 5 kgs, mass 5 kgs, coefficient of friction given. So this is the formula, F S is equal to mu g or mg. So m is the mass is given, g is already known. You will multiply these two and then you will be getting the value of the friction, because action and reaction, whatsoever the amount of force you will apply, same amount of force will act from the other side of it. This will be the force of friction, which will try to move your motion, which will try to stop you moving. So these are the techniques to calculate the force acting on a body when it is moving on the surface. You were asked to calculate. What was given? Mass. And then what was given? Then coefficient of friction was given, and you have calculated the force, frictional force, which was acting on the object. So let's move further. This is another problem, and you are asked to find out the centripetal force. And when you are asked to calculate the centripetal force, basically you need to know the concept of the centripetal force. Centripetal force is a type of force which tends to move the body inside a circular motion. What's the formula to calculate centripetal force? This one is the formula to calculate centripetal force. How much centripetal force is required? You must directly memorize or refresh your mind to get the formula of centripetal force. That is mv squared, mv divided by r is mv squared divided by r. This is basically square mv squared divided by r. So what you need to calculate the centripetal force, you need to know the mass of the body, and you must know the through which velocity you are rotating the body in a circular path. So here is the value of r to move in a circular radius 50 centimeters by speed of. So the question is clear. This is the mass of the body, and this is this radius of the circle at which he is asking to move the object. So this with this speed. So what will be the centripetal force acting? So this is the formula to calculate centripetal force. This is centripetal force C. So by after putting value, you are getting the value of centripetal force. So here are some questions to understand, some important definitions, some important questions to remember. That is branch of mechanics that deals with the study of motion of an object and causes its motion is called dynamics. Causes its motion means you are basically asked to calculate, to study the force, effect of the force. What type of the force is, what does it do? It tries to stops or tries to stop the moving object. It moves or tries to move the object at rest. So this was the concept of the force, and force is always a vector quantity. And in dynamics, we study about force as well. So this was our main focus. Define force and write its unit. An agency which moves or tends to move, stops or tends to stop the motion of a body is called force. Unit of force is Newton. So what is meant by inertia? Inertia of a body is its property due to which it resists any change in its state of rest or motion. Where you have studied the now we have discussed in detail by considering the example of passenger. When passengers are standing inside a bus, the bus suddenly starts moving, passenger falls backside. Divide your body in two portions, one which is in a connection which is attached with the lower surface of the bus, upper one which is free. Before motion of the bus, both the bodies were at rest, both part of your body and bus all were at rest. But when suddenly bus starts moving, your lower portion of the body, which is directly in contact with the bus, becomes in motion with the motion of the bus. Your upper portion of the body was at rest before motion, wants to be at rest due to inertia, so that's why you fall forward, backward. Passengers always fall backward when the bus or a car, when a moving object suddenly starts moving. So this is the concept of inertia. There is another half part of this story. Example, that is when sudden brakes are applied, you fall forward. Why? Because when the bus starts moving, your whole body is in motion with the motion of the bus. When bus suddenly applies the brake, your lower portion of the body which was in contact with the bus becomes at rest with the rest of the bus. Your upper portion of the body was in motion, wants to be in motion due to inertia. So that's why passengers fall forward. So this is the concept of inertia. We have discussed the example of a tree. Before shaking a tree, the fruit of the tree was at rest. And when you shake the tree, the fruit wants to be at rest due to inertia. So that's why the fruit falls. There was another example of the coin placed at a card and the card was placed over the glass. If you gently pull the card moves fastly to the other side and the coin falls at the same place at the same area under the card where it was placed above the card. The reason is simple. The coin was at rest. Due to inertia, it wants to be at rest. So that's why it falls at the same place. Here, this is the concept of few examples from the inertia to understand. Define momentum and give its formula in unit. Momentum of a body is quantity of motion it possesses due to its mass and velocity. Quantity of a body possesses, quality of motion a body possesses due to its mass and velocity. More is the mass, more will be the momentum of the object. More is the velocity or the speed, more is the velocity. More will be the momentum of a body. Faster you move the body, faster will be the momentum. You throw the bullet with the hand, the impact will be different. You fire the same bullet with the help of a gun, the impact will be different. So this is the concept of momentum in our life. What's the unit of momentum? Momentum unit is kg meter per second. So if you multiply with second, if you multiply with second and divide with second, you people have already done. You people have already done multiplying and dividing. By dividing, it becomes kg meter per second square. This one, this portion, kg meter per second square. The upper portion is will be second. So another unit of momentum is kg second or Newton second. Sorry, kg meter per second square, which is equal to Newton, and its unit is also Newton second. And if anyone asks you from where you are finding this unit, then your answer must be a very simple. By multiplying and dividing with the second, so with 1 second it becomes Newton. With the other second it's along the Newton. So its unit is Newton second. State second law of motion. When a net force acts on a body, it produces acceleration in the body in the direction of net force. The magnitude of this force, the magnitude of this force, this acceleration is directly proportional to the force, net force acting on the body, and inversely proportional to the mass. So these are the two portions: directly proportional to the net force, inversely proportional to the mass. So this is the statement of Newton's second law of motion. Most famous equation have to be equal to ma. If you know the mass and acceleration of a body, if anyone tells you this, such amount of mass, a force action produces acceleration of such a meter per second square, how much force was acting, how much force was applied, must have applied, then you can calculate by using Newton's second law of motion. That is F is equal to ma, and that formula is used to calculate acceleration for mass and force. If two of three quantities are given, then this is the best tool or the technique to calculate the third one. That is F force, M mass, and acceleration A. If two quantities are given, then we can calculate the third one. Define Newton. We have already defined it. We are revising it again. 1 Newton is the force that produces an acceleration of 1 meter per second square in a body of mass 1 kg. Here it is. F is equal to ma. So mass is 1 kg. This one, and acceleration is meter per second square. So after looking at the units of the formula, you can also define in a very easiest way. So This is the 1 Newton force. When it acts on a body of 1 kg mass and it produces an acceleration of 1 meter per second square, so the force will be 1 Newton. This is the same given above, and this is the simple type of the technique to understand, to get it clear, to understand for the long time, so that by using the units, how it becomes more easier to define any physical quantity. So what you have to understand the sequence of the physical quantities. You can't start with the acceleration. You can't start. It will be good if you start with the force. How much force is applied on a body? Then what had happened? What was the mass of the body? That was 1 kg. And what had happened? It has produced some acceleration. If it was at rest, it starts moving. So acceleration is produced, velocity is changed. So this is the similar case when, if you look at the concept of the force, you have written formula F is equal to ma. Now what you have done, you have not done anything. You have just and only marked each quantity with 1 Newton force and 1 kg mass applied on a 1 kg mass, and responsible to produce acceleration of 1 meter per second square. So this was the sequence which you have made. So moving ahead, what is the weight? The net force, which the force with which the earth attracts a body towards its center is called weight of a body. So this is one. Otherwise defined at what machine, at wood machine, and for what purpose is it used? Adult machine is an arrangement of two objects of unequal masses attached to the ends of a string, passes over a pulley. Arrangement is used to find the acceleration due to gravity. So this is basically arrangement made to calculate acceleration due to gravity. It is normally used in the lab. In the lab, it's used to calculate the acceleration due to gravity. So here it is, Newton's third law of motion. Newton's third law of motion can be defined as, to every action there is reaction, always equal but opposite in direction. So this is basically statement of Newton's third law of motion. Rocket movement, firing a gun, firing with the help of a gun. After fire, your shoulder is pushed back. This is also in accordance with Newton's third law of motion. Escaping of air from balloon, when the air escapes at the same time, action and reaction are visible during that type of motion. Rocket movement is the best example of Newton's third law of motion. Or walking on ground is the best example of Newton's third law of motion. And many more board, all types of, these are all types of the examples which are linked to Newton's third law of motion. So here it is, purpose of this class is to revise some of the main topics of your class or the chapter. Define isolated system with an example. Group of interacting objects on which external force, no external force is acting is called isolated system. Suppose you are having different number of balls and you have poured these balls inside a cube and you are shaking the cube. You are unable to hear the sound of the moving ball, the striking ball, colliding ball, and you are unable to move any amount of energy from outer to inner side. So that's why such types of the systems are isolated systems. Motion of gas molecule in a closed container. You have considered a closed container. Inside there is a gas molecule, but you are looking from the outside. You can't do anything against these molecules. You can't apply any force on these molecules. You can't take out energy of these molecules because the container is sealed. So there is no net motion of the mass from in to out or out to inside, or even the energy as well. What is meant by friction? The force that opposes the motion of an object is called friction. So this is the concept of the when you drag any object over the surface of sand, you are facing problem to drag. The force which is trying to stop the dragging of any object, that is basically friction. What happens? There are if normally if we see the surfaces looks plain, they are smooth, but if you see a stage comes when you drag one surface over the other, either it's glass, either it's any other type of the surface, you feel some problem. Uh, if you say, observe the same, if you use the same technique to drag any object over the surface of water and then over the sand and then over the glass and then over the marble, you will feel different types of the force acting to stop. It will be minimum in case of the water. It will reduce in case of maximum reduction of the force. So why the water have frictional force which is very much less? What happens when we place one surface with the other surface? Interlocking force exists between the two surfaces of the body. So this force tends to stop the motion of a body. So this is called frictional force. It acts always acts in opposite to the motion of the body. What are the cold wedge points? This is the concept of cold wedge points are the points between two some smooth surfaces in contact. Normally, if we see with our naked eye, it looks like a plane surface, but in reality, it's not plane. Cold wedge are there. So that's the reason when we drag one object over the other, we feel it difficult while dragging. These cold wedges resist the surfaces from sliding over each other. So that's why they stop, they interlock the surface together. So define coefficient of friction. What type of the coefficient of friction is and how will you define? It is defined as the ratio between force of limiting friction and the normal reaction. Mathematically, this is basically force and this is reaction. If I am placing any object on a surface or table, the weight of that object is equal to the reaction which acts in downward direction, reaction acts in upward direction. So the ratio between the two is basically coefficient of friction. What is rolling friction? The frictional force when a body rolls on a surface is called rolling friction. And in case of rolling, we need small force to move the body because rolling friction is very less than the sliding friction. In case of rolling a tire and moving a block of the same size from one place to another, it becomes difficult, but the same weight tire will become easier because there is a less frictional force between tire and the surface. But in case of a big block surface is in contact of a large surface area, so that's the interlocking force is more. So this is the reason why it becomes difficult to drag one object over the other. In which case it is easy for the tire to roll over rough ground or smooth ground. Of course, it is clear from the question which case it will be easy. Rough ground mean more interlocking force and smooth ground mean less interlocking force between the two, which results in the friction. In case of rough ground, it is easy for the tire to roll over because rough ground has greater friction than the smooth ground. So if the smooth ground, the friction is small, it is difficult for a tire to roll over. Instead of its tire slip, when the tire will slip, when the road is smooth, when the tire will move and will get interlocked or grip on the road due to the rough surface of the rough tire. Both the cases are practiced, both the cases are from our life. We use new tire because they have more perfect frictional force between tire and the road, which helps to move the car or the bus or on the road smoothly. But if the tires are smooth, and it becomes very difficult for driving during the driving, and it, it slips instead of moving ahead. So what is meant by braking force? The maximum force of friction between tires of a vehicle and surface of the road which is necessary to stop the vehicle is called braking force. This is the concept of braking force. The force which exists between tire and road is called surface of the road is which is necessary to stop is called braking force. So explain the reason of skidding of vehicles. If the force of friction, here it is, if the force of friction between tires of the vehicle and the road is not sufficient and the brakes are applied very strongly, then the wheels of the car will lock up, its directional control will be lost. This accidental situation is called skidding of vehicles. This is the reason how the skidding takes place. Friction is not enough. Friction is not sufficient with the door and the tire. When you suddenly apply the brake, when you suddenly apply the brake, when you suddenly you try to stop the object when any animal passes on the road and you are in a full speed. So there is a range of these vehicles or the cars so that the brakes can work or the brakes are functional. Our time comes when the brakes are not enough. And the main purpose is where there is very less force of friction between tire and the road. So give importance of threading on tires. On wet road, friction is very small, interlocking is very less. Threading on the tire is designed to increase the friction. Sometimes we have discussed in our class, sometimes we need to increase the friction and sometimes we need to decrease the friction. So it depends on the requirement. What is the type of the requirement? Sometimes we use to reduce the frictional force and in case of shoes, wearing of the shoes and other types of costly or very much important instruments which are used. We use grease oil. We use different types of the techniques to reduce and minimize the frictional force. In some of the cases, we produce frictional force between the bodies so that it becomes easier for the body to their for their motion as well as performance and smooth working. So why the front of the train and planes are made bullet-like? The fronts of the train and planes are made like bullet because it reduces the air resistance at high speed. You know the main drawback, the hurdle, the difficulty for the motion of fast moving object is these fast moving objects are basically moving with faster speed. Their engine is applying some action force on the air. Air is also applying opposite to the motion of the train, towards opposite to the motion of the train, which air friction tries to stop the moving object. Due to this reactional force, the speed of the car or the buses reduces due to resistive force. So the shape of these planes and trains is made bullet-like just to overcome this difficulty. Because aeroplanes get heated, they burn. Too much heat is produced to increase the temperature, body temperature of the aircraft, which is very much which is an extra engineering question to be controlled. So in recent researchers have made more and more research to get it done, the types of the materials which have high value of the resistance. They, when the object is made to move with the fastest speed, these Due to these shapes, these objects are able to hold to stop the losses. How seat belts are useful to avoid injuries? Yes, I have discussed in the previous today's class as well. Rate of change of momentum del P divided by T is equal to F. More is the time, less will be the force. Less is the time, more will be the force. So while kicking a football, it takes a longer time when your foot shoe penetrates inside the football. It takes a long time, so that's why the force is reduced. You are feeling less force. But you replace this football with any iron type of metallic ball, you will see that you will be feeling by applying the same amount of force which you have applied on form, you will be feeling more injury and more pain. Why? Because it's having very less impact time. Less is the impact time, more will be the if the less is the time, more will be the force of injury acting on injury will be the more, impact will be more, damage will be more. So this is the only reason how it prevents by wearing seat and belts. These belts increases impact time and reduces the danger of the injury. Chances of the injury are reduced. These belts fix the passengers with the seats. When suddenly brakes are applied, their belt stops the upper body part of the passengers to move forward due to inertia. We have already discussed when sudden brakes are applied, lower portion of the body becomes at rest with the rest of the body. Car, but upper portion was in motion, wants to be in motion. So that's why we fell forward. So to overcome this difficulty, everyone is forced. The traffic police constables always making they are struggling, putting efforts to educate the people to wear the seat belt so that to avoid to make them safe from such types of brutal types of injuries. So accidents are minimized. Seat belts save the passengers from colliding with the front of the screen. Why? One is due to inertia, his body will move forward. And then what are the steps are taken to avoid such types of serious types of injuries? By using seat belt. Define centripetal force and give its formula. A force which keeps the body to move in a circle is called centripetal force. So this is the concept of the force. At the same time, what is the centrifugal force? The force which tends to move the body outside the circle. Both forces are, if one is action, other one is reaction. If the central loving force is FC, centripetal force, and central away from the trying to move away from the circle, that is centrifugal. So the formulas are the same, mv square divided by r. On what is the factor this force depends: mass, velocity, and the radius of the circular path at which you are trying to rotate the body or define centripetal acceleration and give its formula. This is the formula used to calculate centripetal acceleration. A is equal to v square divided by r, and the acceleration of a body moving a circle is called centripetal force. The direction is always toward the center, and its direction is from the center, from the sides of the circle, directed along and tangent to the direction of the velocity. Velocity changes at every point. At the same point, the acceleration is produced, and the direction of this acceleration is always directed towards the center of the circle. So, how seat belts are useful in two ways at the time of driving. Seat belts are useful at the time of driving. They provide an external force to a person wearing seat belt. Avoid striking of collision of your head with the windscreen. Additional time is required for stretching seat belt. This prolongs the stopping time for momentum to change, reduces the effect of the collision. I have already discussed this in detail. Why you another most important thing, why you use seat belt, because it will increase the impact time. With the increase of the impact time, we move back to the formula to calculate the rate of change in momentum, which clearly explains that If the impact time is very large, then the force will be less. If the impact time is very less, that is in case of iron ball, if you kick with the same force on iron ball or metallic ball, and then you are provided a football, you apply the same amount of force on the football, in which case you will be facing more injury and painful because in the case of metal or iron ball. So what's the reason? Because impact time is very short in case of iron or metal, but impact time is more in case of football because surface of the football moves inward when you apply force. It takes more time. It increases your impact time. So what is inertia? Inertia of a body is its property due to which it resists the change in state of rest or motion. What are the examples? Glass. Take a glass and cover it with a piece of cardboard. Place a coin on the cardboard. Now push the card horizontally with a jerk of the finger. The coin falls into the glass due to inertia. Whilst the card flicks away. So this is one of the examples for inertia. A body of mass 2 kg is moving with a velocity of 2 meters per second. Find its momentum. So what is given? You are given mass, you are given velocity, you are asked to calculate momentum. The formula to calculate momentum is this one. P is equal to mv. This is the formula to calculate momentum. If you look at the given values, that is mass and velocity, then you are able to calculate the momentum by multiplying mass in the volume, and this is the value of momentum. This unit can also be written as Newton second. Both have the same. And you have seen how you have calculated Newton second. So differentiate between force and inertia. Force moves or tends to move bodies. Stops or tends to stop the motion of a body. The force can also change the direction of motion of a body. This is the concept of a force. But in case of inertial, a body is its property due to which it resists any change in state of rest or motion. So this is the concept of inertia. So moving ahead, calculate the value of force acting on a body of mass 4 kgs and produces acceleration of 2 meters per second square in it. We have already done so many problems. This is the revision. Write down the values, given values of the mass, acceleration, and you are asked to calculate force. Force formula is F is equal to ma. When mass of the object is known, acceleration is already given, then we can calculate the third one. Define like parallel forces, unlike parallel forces, and give an example. Unlike parallel forces. Unlike parallel forces are the forces that are parallel but have directions opposite to each other. In figure above, F1 and F2 are like parallel forces. The force acting on the steering of a car by the hand of the driver. One is acting towards you, another is acting away from you. So these are the two forces. Basically, they are parallel, but they are acting in different directions. State the principle of motion of rocket. Rocket moves on the principle of Newton's third law of motion. When its fuel burns, hot gases escape out from its tail with a very high speed. The reaction of these gases on the rocket causes it to move opposite. One is action, other one is reaction. What are the disadvantages of friction? Friction moving with high speed causes oppose the motion and limits the speed of moving object. So most of our useful energy is lost as heat and sound due to friction. So this is one of the reason why. What are the disadvantages of friction? Friction plays an important role, and we have discussed in detail what are the advantages of friction, when the friction will be more useful for us, and when it will be more required and when we reduce. So we have discussed in detail. With this, today's class ends. I hope you people have understood today's purpose of this class is to revise some of the main topics. Along with the revision we have learned about the techniques to calculate the dynamics problems when these will be calculated. With this, our class ends. Thank you very much.